JF Stretford, Paddock. As you can see, I'm outside Old Trafford for the paper talk, and it's spitting. Get him in, it's spitting, but I'm not putting my hood up because, you know, I'm mad. Right, anyway, we'll get into the news. There's lots of sort of a fallout from the Manchester United result against Leeds, that emphatic win over Leeds. Still papers talking about the comments that were made by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, some of the comments made by pundits analysing the game, talking about Paul Pogba, not giving him any credit, certain ex-Liverpool midfielders, for example. We'll get into a little bit of that later on. First of all, there's the Jesse Lingard story, because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer dropped a hint around Jesse Lingard's future after the game. Lingard didn't feature in that 5-1 win. He's still isolating, I think. So he wasn't available, so there's nothing too much to look into there in terms of why he wasn't in the squad. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was talking about him, and he's also said that don't forget about Jesse Lingard when talking about his attacking options. He has reinvented himself, and he has come back the man that we know with the quality he has. He is going to play a big part. I forgot about him when I spoke about goal scorers. Of course, there could be more rotation. They will be fresher. You have to have a big, strong squad to be competitive in this league. It's the best league in the world. So he's mentioning there the fact that Jesse Lingard could still have a future at Manchester United. Now, the sort of rumour mill or the reports are indicating that perhaps he could go back to West Ham. West Ham obviously had a big win over Newcastle on yesterday. He had a great time there last season, 9 goals and I think, was it 5 assists in just whatever game, was it 16 games, whatever it was at the back end of the season. So he was on fire there, enjoying his football, playing as well as we've seen him play in recent years. Looked like he was going to go back there. Now that's cooled a little bit, but there's been a little bit of intrigue because Darren Randolph, who's a goalkeeper at West Ham, posted on Instagram, Jesse Lingard, I'll be seeing you soon at Rush Green for training. You know you want to, with a wink emoji. So people are still looking at that going, oh, well, maybe that's an indication that Jesse Lingard still could be heading over to West Ham. Like I said earlier, had a great time of it, despite the fact that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer seems to be indicating he's got a future. You have to wonder where Jesse Lingard would fit in at Manchester United at the moment. Yes, he wasn't involved in the squad, but you look at it, neither was Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford's out for a little while. Neither was Edinson Cavani. Edinson Cavani didn't feature. Donny van der Beek didn't feature at all. He didn't get off the bench. So there's other players there that you would expect to have some sort of involvement in the first team who weren't playing. Anthony Martial only came on for a little bit. I know he's a striker and that's not necessarily competition for Jesse Lingard, but there are players that are going to come back into this team or into the squad who would probably be ahead of Jesse Lingard in the pecking order. So it does make you think, well, is Jesse Lingard going to get many games at Manchester United if he stays? Ole Gunnar Solskjaer often talks about players that are still at Manchester United and talks about them having a future. He even did it with Alexis Sanchez when Alexis Sanchez was on loan at Inter Milan, and we all knew that Alexis Sanchez had no future at Manchester United. But because Alexis Sanchez was a Manchester United player, he was still on our books, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer talks about them in the right way, talks about him in the right way and saying, I would love to see him come back. He's like the opposite of Jose Mourinho. You remember Jose Mourinho just used to basically slag off players if they weren't fit or they weren't coming, or they were loaned out or whatever. They were almost dead to him. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't do that. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. There's obviously, 16 days, whatever's left of the transfer window. Not a long time. So if West Ham are going to make a move, they've got to do it within the next 2 weeks. We know what Jesse Lingard's done for them. And as always, we'll keep you posted on that one because personally, I've said this many a time, I wouldn't mind Jesse Lingard moving on. I think he played, like I said earlier, his best football for a long time at West Ham. Will he recreate that here at Old Trafford? I hope he does if he stays. I'm just not so sure. I think maybe it might be time for him to move on, especially if he's not going to get the games he needs. Don't forget, there is a World Cup next summer as well. He want to go to that with England. He missed out on the Euros. Just missed out on the Euros, of course. Was in the initial squad, but not in the sort of 22-man or whatever it was squad. So we'll have to see what happens with that one. But it's one of those where if Jesse Lingard stay, I wouldn't be devastated because, like I said, he had a great time of it at West Ham, and we've seen what he can do at the past at Manchester United. But if he does move on, then we wish him well. In terms of incomings, Manchester United have been tracking Sarr, not Ismaila Sarr from Watford, who I'm a massive fan of, but Met star Pape, P-A-P-E, Mata Sarr. This is in the Daily Mail. He's being tracked by several Premier League heavyweights, with Chelsea, Manchester United and Man City keen on the midfield. Wonder kid. He's only 18 years old, so same age as Eduardo Camavinga, I think there. And it says here, Met sensation Sarr is being lined up by a host of the Premier League big guns. They're tracking the Senegal international, who is regarded as one of the brightest young talents in France. Producer Cam's just losing his umbrella there, but I'll crack on. It says he burst onto the scene last season with Metz, and after just one reserve reserve team game, was promoted to the senior side, and it goes on to say the all-action midfielder has had 22 appearances in League One last season, scoring 3 times. It seems like he's on a list. On a list for United, on a list for Chelsea, on a list for City. We have players, don't we, that are on our list. We have players that we're tracking, that we're looking at. We've had this in the past where you say, oh, you know what, we're looking at players. I remember a good example was David Brooks, for Bournemouth, when we're going, oh, we're looking at him. And we spoke to, I think it was Peter Rutzler at The Athletic, who covered Bournemouth, and he was like, United will just have a lot of players on list, and he'll be one of them. It doesn't mean they're going to make an offer. So I think this is one of those where you're keeping tabs on him because he's doing so well, because he's such a bright star. He's obviously played a lot of games, bursting onto the scene there as an 18-year-old. So you expect us to be monitoring him. Is that a concrete offer on the horizon? I doubt it. I would be amazingly surprised if he arrived at this club this summer anyway. So we'll have to see what happens with that one. In terms of other signings coming in, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being a little bit coy. He was asked about it after the emphatic 5-1 victory over Leeds, and he said, I think anything from now is a bonus. I can't say we got to do more, but you never know in football. We have done well in the summer window. Raphael has come in as well, which I think gave the crowd a boost and to the players, so you're excited, of course. And there are 8 or 9 players that are not here today. So he's been a little bit sort of cagey, shall we say. I mean, it depends on how you interpret that. You can look at that and go, oh, well, that means it's done, we're not getting anyone. You can look at that and go, oh, he says, there might be a bit something happening. Who knows? There's talk in the still of Kieran Trippier. That has been rumbling on now for a number of months. There could be a final twist in it. I mentioned Eduardo Camavinga. That's cooled a little bit. Sol Niguez seems to have cooled a little bit. But you might see something at the 11th hour. We have done that recently. We did it last summer. You remember on transfer deadline day, I think it was the likes of Diallo and Palestri weren't confirmed until the actual deadline day. Even the summer before, where it was like Edinson Cavani was very last minute. I mean, he couldn't even play in the Newcastle game, if you remember, because we left it so last minute, and he was a free agent. So we know what Manchester United are capable of with leaving things late, and it's likely that we are going to have lots of stories and reports and lots of links with different players right up until the end of the transfer window. So we'll just have to see what happens. But Ole Gunnar Solskjaer playing his cards pretty close to his chest on that one. Now, as always, there's been lots of talk about Paul Pogba. I mentioned him earlier. The fact that we saw the pundits after the Manchester City game, where City lost at Spurs yesterday, and everyone was talking about Paul Pogba, obviously, where Graeme Souness sort of refused to give him any credit and was talking about how, you expect a £100 million midfielder, even though he's not a £100 million player, to get you 4 assists in a goal, even though no United player's ever done that before in the Premier League, so I don't know what he was on about. But there's more stories this morning that perhaps PSG are willing to offer him a bumper pay deal if they can get him next summer on a free. This is in the Independent. I think it's Miguel Delaney. He's saying that the midfielder who shone on the opening day, that he could be heading to Paris Saint-Germain. It says Paris Saint-Germain are willing to pay Paul Pogba £510,000 a week for the start of the 22-23 season. That's if obviously they're going to get him on a free, because if they get him on a free, they don't have to pay a transfer fee, obviously, so they can save that money and maybe use it to make him one of the most highest paid players in the world. I think you look at the money that's being bandied about, he'd be right up there with the likes of some of their players as well. I don't know if he'd be on the same as Lionel Messi, who's obviously just gone there, but he'd be up there with likes of Neymar and Mbappe. It says, obviously the 28-year-old is available on a Bosman at the end of the season, and his preference to leave Old Trafford. Pogba would favour a move to one of Barcelona or Real Madrid. The problem with those two clubs, even if it was a free and it was just wages, they're both struggling somewhat financially. I think Real Madrid are a little bit better off, if you can call it that, than Barcelona, but could he end up going to Spain? It's doubtful. There's obviously a big hope that he'll stay. I spoke about the fact he got 4 assists against Leeds the other day. I'm sure I'm not alone in being a United fan who wants to see him stay and wants to see him put in those performances here at Old Trafford for many years to come, but we don't know whether he is or not. He's got a year left on his deal. It has been left to run down. It is a worry. He hasn't signed a new deal. Can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer convince him? Will the fact we brought in Jadon Sancho, Rafael Varane, and the fans are back in the stadium, you can see how loved he is by the fans in the stadium, will that convince him at all? I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see. But if he doesn't stay at Old Trafford, then Paris Saint-Germain and £510,000 a week looks like it could be a likely destination. On the Graeme Souness and the Paul Pogba front, I mean, it is getting really weird, Because, listen, you can criticise Paul Pogba. He's not above criticism. You can say he's not been consistent enough. You could argue that you ought to see him do more in some of the bigger games. I get all that. But what Graeme Souness has been doing recently, or well, not just recently, almost ever since Paul Pogba arrived, it's just been bizarre. I mean, you're talking about a player who got 4 assists. He broke records, the number of assists in one game, and you still won't give him any credit. You saw Micah Richards, who was sticking up for Paul Pogba. This is an ex-City player sticking up for Paul Pogba and comparing it to the Harry Kane situation, just as Adam McCullough did. Just over there at Hotel Football, when he took that argument to Gary Neville and to Roy Keane and said, you look at the narrative around Harry Kane and how he's a saint and he's so professional, and how that's compared to Paul Pogba, who hasn't ever ducked out of training, who hasn't fully spat his dummy out in terms of, I'm not going to turn up, I'm not going to play. Harry Kane does things like that. You have Graeme Souness sticking up for Harry Kane and saying, oh, you know, I've got different information, all this, refusing to give Paul Pogba any credit for his performance against Leeds, which is just, it's almost a dereliction of duty as a pundit to not talk about a midfielder's performance when he's played so well, to not even mention that, or to not even analyse it and just go dismiss it. You're paid to talk about these things and you're not doing that. You just want to dismiss it and you just want to talk about the tired old tropes about Paul Pogba's attitude. Or when Micah Richards was sticking up for him, Graeme Souness shuts him down and says, let's move on, let's talk about something else, let's talk about Liverpool. I mean, it's ridiculous. And you can't say that people are being too harsh on Graeme Souness when they say he's got an agenda against Paul Pogba. Now listen, I get that some people may not like Paul Pogba, and I get that some people may question his agent especially, and also the odd comment that Paul Pogba has made about wanting a new challenge or something hasn't gone down too well. There's always been this feeling that he is going to move on, that Manchester United may be a pit stop, if you will. Gary Neville said he expects him to move on. I understand all that, but Paul Pogba, when he plays well, deserves credit. Paul Pogba doesn't deserve to be just dismissed, and it's getting a bit strange when you can't even have a conversation around him. You can't even talk about him and the way he's playing without being critical and without saying, well, you expect him to play like that, or you adding things onto his price tag and making him £100 million player, as I said earlier, when he's not. I mean, I know it's only a bit of a quibble because he's a what was it, £89 million player, but it's just little things like that. It just seems really weird, and like there is, I hate using this word because I think it gets used too often, but you do see an agenda there with Souness and Paul Pogba, and it's just getting silly when you've got ex-City players sticking up for him and getting dismissed. And I think with Paul Pogba, there's always this sort of element of extremes on our views with him. He's either amazing, you can't say anything wrong about him, or you can't criticise him at all, or he's the worst player on the pitch, or he's lazy and all this other rubbish. And the fact is, he is a supremely talented player. He's one of the best midfielders in the world, who probably could be a bit more consistent, but he started the season as well as we could have hoped, and I think he deserves credit for that, and people should be talking about that, not having a dig at him or dismissing any praise for him. It's just getting really weird, and I think Graeme Souness and maybe Sky Sports need to look at that, because it's just not on. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer also after the game has been praising Mason Greenwood, saying his approach, attitude and application, everything he has done every day has been getting better and better, and I think that's maturity as well in the kid. He's filling out, he's stronger, his stride is stronger, and you know when he ran away from the defender and scored his goal, it was a joy to see. I mean, Mason Greenwood was absolutely fantastic, wasn't he, against Leeds. He just was. He's looking the real deal. It's hard not to get overly excited about him. I know he's still a kid, he's still a youngster, he's still a teenager, but you look at the way he's progressed. Had a little bit of a difficult time during parts last season. There were a few question marks, ridiculous question marks over him, but he's sort of proved those silly critics wrong already. I know you've seen him on opening day, and we know what he's capable of. We saw his record for the academy as well, and at every level he's just been getting better and better. And you know, like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said there, he's filling out a little bit, and with the likes of Anthony Martial struggling a little bit last season, with Marcus Rashford having his operation, Edinson Cavani's obviously 34, he can't play every week. Maybe Mason Greenwood is going to get more opportunities, and maybe more opportunities in that number 9 position. We saw him down the middle and how well he played. Maybe that could be where he plays more often for Manchester United, and that's where he did his best work, if you can call it that, for the academy. He's a striker. He's not a right winger where he's been played. And that's one of the reasons we brought in Jadon Sancho, because we don't have a right winger, or we didn't have a right winger, and so we brought in Jadon Sancho. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with Mason Greenwood and whether he does get more opportunities down the middle. But I would love to see him playing as a number 9, because I think that's, as I said earlier, his best position. And just finally as well, Ethan Laird having a medical ahead of a move to Swansea City. He's going there on loan. Obviously, Ethan Laird, I think he was at MK Dons last season, when it did really well. Going to Swansea City on loan this season. Russell Martin, the Swansea City coach, has said that Laird was upstairs watching tonight. He was driven all the way down to Swansea. I hope that he's ready to come in. He needs a medical and needs to sit down with us and discuss how it's going to work. So looks like he's on the verge of a move. Hopefully that'll work out for him, because we know that Ethan Laird is extremely talented. Say a right back, but he's more just like a sort of right wing back, innit? So that's how he played at MK Dons. There's never been any question marks about his ability. It's just about his fitness. He's had a few injury problems. Did well at MK Dons though, managed to keep himself fit, and hopefully he can do the same at Swansea City and come back and challenge here at Old Trafford for a place in the first team. So that's been the paper talk. Make sure you are watching the rest of the channel, because we have got some good videos coming up. Got McCullough and Joe are back for a Premier League P-Take. What can they possibly be talking about? They usually talk about Mikel Arteta and his failings, but he's doing really well so far this season, isn't he? So they might be running out of material. So make sure you're watching that. Make sure you are liking, sharing and subscribing. We're going to get inside because it is getting a bit nippy. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.